Anyone here speak French? The shout cracked through the glass walls of Sterling Fashion House. Papers flew, voices froze. Sarah Bennett stopped mid-wipe, cloth trembling in her hand. Behind the boardroom door, the billionaire owner waved a contract like it was on fire. Translate this, and my salary's yours. £23,000. Laughter followed. Maybe the cleaning lady can help, someone sneered. They didn't know the woman they mocked spoke 5 languages, one of them the very French they couldn't read. And they didn't know that ink on that paper carried her father's stolen legacy. Sarah's jaw tightened. The same company that ruined her family was about to need her more than anyone in that room. But helping them might save her mother, or destroy her life again. What would you do? Don't miss what happens when the invisible finally speaks. Like this video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales, where true stories of courage hit where it hurts most. The laughter still echoed when Sarah's fingers brushed the edge of the conference table. A streak of polish glimmered beneath the fluorescent lights, perfect like she was trained to leave it. But inside something shifted. Her father's voice whispered from memory. Words build bridges, Habibti. The words that once felt comforting now sounded like a dare. That night, she walked home through rain that seemed to fall harder on the poor side of the city. Neon lights bled across puddles, her reflection splitting and reforming with every step. Inside their tiny apartment, her mother's breathing machine hummed steadily beside the worn sofa. Bills covered the kitchen counter like confetti from a celebration she was never invited to. "Sarah," her mother called weakly. "You're home late again." "Just overtime," Sarah said softly, removing her gloves. "Your hands, they look raw. They'll heal." She smiled, a lie she'd practiced well. When her mother drifted back to sleep, Sarah pulled the crumpled photo from her pocket, the one she'd secretly snapped of the French document on the boardroom table. The heading read Proposition Diffusion. Maison Dubossy. The company name burned like an old wound. Her father had once dreamed of that partnership, years before Sterling fired him under the excuse of restructuring. His name had vanished from their records, but not from her memory. She powered up her aging laptop, its fan wheezing to life like an old man's sigh. She began translating, line by line, word by word. Heritage textile, artisanal lineage, workforce optimization clause. Each phrase was a dagger, every technical term reminding her of the language her father loved and the empire that crushed him. Hours passed. When the morning light seeped through the curtains, Sarah's desk was covered in notes and empty coffee cups. Her eyes were dry, her mind sharper than ever. She'd done it, at least part of it. But no one could know. At 8 a.m., she was back at Sterling Fashion House, uniform pressed, mask of invisibility back in place. The executives arrived laughing about golf scores and private jets. Only one person noticed her, Richard Hayes, the vice president who'd mocked her the day before. His smirk was the kind you earned from privilege, not intelligence. "Morning sunshine," he said, tossing his coat to a chair. "Don't polish too close to the screens. We wouldn't want fingerprints from your cleaning chemicals." Sarah forced a nod. "Yes, sir." He grinned wider, mistaking obedience for ignorance. But she was already planning her move. That evening, when the offices emptied, she returned. The janitorial badge gave her after-hours access. Security barely glanced up as she pushed her cart toward the executive floor. Under the dim light of the boardroom, she approached the whiteboard where yesterday's failed translations were scrawled. Errors everywhere. She couldn't help it, she began correcting them. Her father's pen glided across the glass like it had been waiting all these years for this moment. She signed the last correction quietly. Night Owl. By morning, chaos had erupted. The boardroom buzzed with confusion. "Who the hell is Night Owl?" one manager barked. "Some consultant. Hacker. Spy." Another guessed. Richard Hayes stood silent, scanning the notes, recognition flickering behind his eyes. Not of the translation, but of the handwriting. He smiled slow and cold. "Actually," he said, "that was me." Sarah froze outside the glass wall, her blood running cold. He was taking credit. Again. For the second time in her family's story, a sterling executive had stolen a Bennett's work. The day blurred into fury and silence. That night, Sarah found her locker open, her father's fountain pen gone. Panic surged through her chest. The next day, Hayes cornered her in the break room, the pen twirling in his hand like a trophy. "Nice pen," he said. "French, isn't it? Expensive for a cleaning lady." "Please," Sarah whispered, voice trembling. He leaned close. "Security's curious about your extracurricular activities. Wouldn't want them to think you're spying for Dubosi, would we?" "I'm not." "Then keep your head down, and maybe your mother won't lose her housing benefits." The words hit harder than a slap. She couldn't breathe, couldn't scream, couldn't fight. Not yet. But in that silence, resolve was born. That night she broke every rule. She copied the entire document. She worked in the dim light of the staff closet, surrounded by mops and ammonia, the air thick with the smell of chemical defiance. She translated every paragraph perfectly. Every clause, every hidden trap. And when she reached the clause about workforce optimization, her hands shook. 300 layoffs, including her cousin's family in the factory line. Her phone buzzed, a hospital text. Her mother's condition worsening. Another bill. Another deadline. And then a message from her landlord. Eviction notice final. 72 hours. Sarah pressed her forehead against the table. "Papa," she whispered, "how do I fight people who own everything?" She didn't expect an answer. But sometimes silence speaks louder than words. The next day, security called her in for questioning. "After-hours presence detected," the chief said. "I clean office. I no speak English good," she murmured, lowering her eyes. Hayes watched, smirking from the corner. "She's harmless," he said sweetly. "Probably just lost her way." They laughed again, the same sound that had haunted her for 6 years. But something inside her broke free. She was done being harmless. That evening she went back, not as a cleaner but as her father's daughter. She slipped into the server room, uploaded her completed translation to Sterling's shared drive under Night Owl's signature, and scheduled it to send to James Sterling himself before the morning meeting. When she returned to the boardroom, Hayes was already there, waiting in the dark. "I knew it was you," he said quietly. "You should have stayed invisible." The air between them crackled like static. "You stole my father's life," she said. He laughed. "Your father was collateral. Your convenience. Now hand over the flash drive." Sarah stepped back. "You're afraid. Because for once, you don't understand the language that's about to bury you." Before he could react, she walked out, her heart pounding, her courage louder than his threats. The next morning, chaos. Sterling stormed into the boardroom, waving the translation. "Who did this?" he demanded. "This is flawless." Hayes stepped forward, all fake modesty. "That would be me, sir." "Funny," Sterling said, narrowing his eyes. "The metadata says, Night Owl. Sent from a restricted employee network." Hayes froze. Sarah kept wiping the table like nothing was happening. "Bring in all staff from the cleaning department," Sterling ordered. Minutes later, Sarah stood before them, surrounded by suits. "Do you speak French?" Sterling asked bluntly. Her mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed stay silent. But then she saw Hayes smirking behind him, holding her father's pen like a hostage. That was the moment. The bridge or the abyss. "Yes," she said quietly. "French, Arabic, English." The room went still. "I'm Sarah Bennett. My father was Thomas Bennett, your former translator." Hayes tried to interrupt, but she didn't stop. "He built your global partnerships. You erased him. But I finished what he started." She pulled out her phone, opened the document, and read aloud the clause they'd ignored. "Reduction nécessaire du personnel manufacturier. Minimum 3 cents posts." That means a minimum of 300 workers fired. Not flexible staffing, not cost alignment. Fired. gasps filled the room. Sterling's face hardened. Hayes, is that true? Of course not. Sarah tapped a few keys. Page 16. Paragraph 4. Check it. Sterling scanned. His jaw clenched. You deliberately mistranslated this. I can explain. Explain it to HR, Sterling said coldly. And to the board. Hayes turned pale. You can't take her word over mine. She's a janitor. Sterling glared. She's the only one here who just saved me from signing a lawsuit into bankruptcy. The security guards moved. Hayes stumbled backward, shouting protests as they escorted him out. The boardroom fell silent except for the sound of Sarah's steady breathing. Sterling looked at her differently now. Less like furniture, more like possibility. My offer still stands, he said. Translate the full document by tomorrow. You'll get my salary. Sarah lifted her chin. In writing. With job security and my father's pen returned. Sterling hesitated, then nodded. Done. She took the contract, signed it with the pen Hayes had stolen and went to work. For 18 hours straight she translated. The office lights dimmed, then brightened again as dawn broke. Her reflection in the glass looked older, stronger, a woman reclaiming what the world tried to erase. When she turned in her final draft, her hands shook, not from fear this time but from power. The next morning, during the video conference with Maison Dubosi, the CEO himself appeared on screen. I'd like Miss Bennett to remain for this call, he said in fluent French. Your father once spoke highly of your gift. Sarah blinked. You knew my father. The man smiled. He was a bridge between worlds. You've just built another. Hayes' empty chair sat in the corner like a ghost. Sterling straightened his tie. Shall we proceed? Sarah translated flawlessly. Every tone, every nuance, every hidden meaning. When Dubosi's CEO proposed partnership terms, Sterling agreed instantly, because this time he understood. As the call ended, Sterling turned to Sarah. You just saved this company. Sarah looked him in the eye. No, Mr. Sterling. I just saved what my father built. Silence. Then slowly applause filled the room. Later that day, Sterling handed her a check. £73,000. Enough to save her home, her mother, her future. But the real victory wasn't money. It was walking through those glass halls as every head turned, not in mockery but in respect. From that day on, the janitor's uniform disappeared. A new plaque on her door read, Sarah Bennett, Director of International Relations. And in the reflection of her office window, the ghost of her father smiled back. Proud, silent, infinite. Because sometimes justice doesn't shout. It whispers through translation. And for Richard Hayes. His name vanished from the Sterling Fashion House roster, replaced by a single line in the company's press release. Former vice president dismissed for misconduct and fraud. Sarah saw the headline that evening as she closed her laptop. The city lights flickered across the glass, and for the first time in years, she exhaled without fear. She touched her father's pen, resting in its new crystal holder, and whispered, "We did it, Papa." Then the screen faded to black, but the echo of her voice stayed. Sometimes the invisible don't just get seen. They change everything. Weeks later, London looked different to Sarah. The same marble floors that once echoed under her cart now carried the sound of her heels. People greeted her by name. The doors that used to close when she passed now opened with quiet respect. Yet she hadn't changed who she was, only what they finally chose to see. One evening, she stopped by the janitor's closet she once called her office. The mop, the gloves, the bucket, all still there. She placed a small silver plaque on the wall, for those who build bridges when no one is watching. It wasn't for herself. It was for her father, for Acton, for everyone who ever worked unseen but never unworthy. As the city lights flickered through her window, Sarah whispered to the pen resting on her desk. The truth spoke louder than money ever could. For the first time, she smiled without fear of losing what she earned. Because power, she realized, isn't given, it's reclaimed. And somewhere, in a boardroom full of suits, Her name was finally spoken with honor. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that courage can begin in silence, like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales. Every story here reminds us, the invisible deserve to be seen, and the truth never fades.